Okay, recording. So welcome everyone. I'm here today with Markus Dell. Very excited to talk to this young man. You're listening to Parkour Coach Companion, and we're available on Spotify or on YouTube. So if you're listening to this on Spotify and you want to watch us animate ourselves, then you can watch on YouTube as well. It should be available. So welcome, Markus.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming. I wanted to get Markus on today basically because Markus do you run the Fifth Unit podcast?
Well, I'm not sure really. Me and Chris were, or sort of have been, maybe the most regular people on it. We tend to be there most weeks, although I'm actually not able to make this evenings. But since the last sort of few weeks, Ethan and Jamie have sort of taken charge of editing the podcast, and Chris sort of runs it and invites people on. We've had a few guests over lockdown, which has been really nice. But yeah, I mean, it's just such a good time, and I think more than anything, it's just a chance. Like, at one point it was once a week or once every 2 weeks, just to sort of nerd out on parkour stuff. It's quite a treat, really.
Yeah, man. I think that usually, the aim of my podcast is really to try and connect coaches specifically, just because I feel like coaches don't talk that much. But I also want to branch out and just like kind of connect the podcasters together, if you see what I mean. So it'd be nice to, obviously speak with you, and then maybe some of the other podcasts as well. I know there's like Height Drop and Sean Woods one and Motus and stuff. And I think it'd be nice if we kind of like stick together and kind of help each other out, because there's only like 5. There's not many really. So
totally. And they all do offer something really quite different, which is nice. There's I don't think we're in any danger of oversaturating the sort of podcast market within parkour, but at the moment it is really nice that everyone, I mean, I think yours is much more it has like an education side of it. Tom Taylor, I know you spoke to Tom Taylor. His new weekly one is very much informative about what's going on in the community. That's such a joy to listen to as well. And yeah, as you mentioned, all the other ones, they all have their own little sort of unique thing. So but absolutely connecting everyone's a great idea.
Yeah, man, definitely. So tell us, for people who don't really know, tell us a bit more about the podcast. Tell us a bit more about Fifth Unit and kind of where you guys are from and how the podcast started.
Sure. So, well, as a team, we're all based around Surrey. Besides Harvey, who's 3 years ago, I think now moved over to Bristol, but the rest of us are still based sort of around Dorking, Brockham, Leatherhead, that sort of area. And it's sort of the second wind of Fifth Unit, I guess. Before I went to uni, there was a group of, again, 6 or 7 of us that were training together, making videos together. And it sort of had a bit of a hiatus when I went to university. And when I came back, the community in Dorking had just basically exploded, going from where it was me and a chap called Adam and Dennis, the 3 of us basically training in Dorking. I go away for 3 years, come back, and there's a community of 30 people, and sessions that are running in Dorking twice a week. They had session on Tuesday, session on Friday. So, kids turning up and getting into the sport. I mean, it was almost unrecognisable, which sounds crazy. But through there, I sort of I'd met Chris and Finn particularly beforehand, but got to know them a lot better, started training again as a group, and eventually, kicked the team up again. Started making videos. That was always the biggest output or the biggest contribution that we sort of as Fifth Unit wanted to contribute to the community. But since then I think we always wanted to give to the community something that we wanted to see. So, and at the same time, create stuff that wasn't necessarily being made in abundance. And podcasting was, something that wasn't being done massively, and thought, here's something that we'd like to see. So can we sort of help be a part of that starting? So yeah, did that and just really enjoyed it, and everything is just based in joy for us. I think it's what do we want to do, what do we want to see, let's just do it and crack on. There's no pressure, there's no financial stress for us. It's just sort of plodding on and getting it done, really.
Yeah, I like that, man. I definitely get a sense of that from your podcasts and from the videos, is that you've kind of kept very true to that enjoyment side of creativity. It never seems like you're like some of your podcasts are literally, you just set the camera up and you're in like a room and you're just like chatting, and it's great, man, because I feel like so many conversations are happening like this in parkour where they don't really get recorded, and it's nice to actually to hear these things get recorded, because I think parkour people, we do have a lot to say and there is a lot to talk about. So yeah, it's great, man. And you've had some guests on as well. You've had Verky recently, and you had Keelan, is that right?
Yeah, we did Ed and Keelan together, Ed Scott and Keelan together, from the BLE in London, which was fun. Then we had Joel Larson came over for a few days around the time of the Leeds Jam. So he came down, we did a podcast with him. And then since lockdown, we did Charlie Havel and Travis over Zoom. So yeah, four different podcasts with guests, and yeah, equally as fun. And here, but actually, all of them had such interesting and noticeably different sort of insights into training that you don't necessarily get to hear. Some people are maybe more vocal on Instagram. Some people are quite honest about, their failings and frustrations and things like that. But it's rare you get to hear someone, particularly for an hour straight, just being honest about the training. And that's, a privilege for us doing the podcast, but hopefully that sort of resonates and people can listen and enjoy that as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like I listened to the Verky one, and I was particularly interested because, like, man, just from an outside perspective, I've met him again. I met him once at the Chase Tag event afterwards, and man, what an incredible talent, and he literally has done things that most humans can only like dream of, really. And I was interested in hearing your questions for him, like about the Kong double gainer and stuff like that. And he's done Kong gainer to a box as well, hasn't he? So like,
yeah,
just
Kong gainer
yeah,
3.
and
Yeah,
then
great.
some as well.
And
like
what? Sorry.
And then some, like the stuff he's doing at the moment as well, just like in his clips, unbelievable. And he's so. How old is he now? How old's Verky?
I wouldn't be able to say with confidence, actually. Yeah, I forget, but he's young. Yeah, he's young. I think 17 or 18 would be my guess. But yeah, what an exceptional talent.
Yeah, it's mad. Like literally making history, like with some of the stuff he's done. It's absolutely crazy, man.
Completely.
But yeah, what are your kind of are you planning just to keep going with the podcast just as you see fit, or is there like any plan particularly, or people that you want to have on?
Yeah, we have some people we'd like to get on, and I think we'd like to take the sort of, for me, the concept of the podcast is, as I mentioned briefly earlier, giving people an opportunity or a platform to share their experiences in that sort of long form way, and also giving people the chance to hear these athletes talking and sharing their insights to particularly mindset and things like that. And I think we'd like to take that idea forward and perhaps show it into different mediums. So we've got an idea, a sort of video idea that I think we'll hope to expand on, that's going to basically do the same thing but with sort of visual insights as well. So I guess that is a direction of the podcast. We'd also we have been working on a video for, well, best part of 2 years now, a year and a half certainly. So putting a lot of time into it, lot of energy, and I think we'll do some sort of accompanying bits with the podcast for that, sort of maybe like similar to the director's cut for Soul Destroyer. Just kind of watch it through as a group, talk about the experiences, talking about, there's trips that I'm having I've been out 3 or 4 times now to try and get the same line, and for whatever reason it doesn't happen, or so all of those stories I think are really nice, and giving a bit of a story behind the video will be fun as well. So again, that's another sort of direction for the podcast. But immediately I think it's just getting on more of our friends, people that we think are going to have interesting thoughts, which is pretty much everyone, sorry. And just keep enjoying it. I think as long as we're enjoying it, we'll keep doing it.
And so recently with the Breach tour, did they come anywhere near you guys?
No, well, they ended, I think, in Brighton, which is probably the closest place to us, or London. We're pretty much sit between London and Brighton, about sort of an hour either side. But yeah, they're certainly the hotspots in the south, I think.
Because I saw they didn't really. I mean, I know they did the T-shirt and stuff. They didn't publicize it massively, the tour. I kind of just started noticing that Ben Reddington was suddenly in like Brighton and all over the spot. And I think, it'd be interesting to see their video when they finish, because I think there's been some crazy stuff that's happened, but it's kind of, they've kept it very lock and key.
Completely. I think when you've got to line up like the boys that are on that tour, there's something special coming. But I also think it's mad how they're clearly saving clips and, taking specific athletes. There's Ed and Travis who are clearly saving clips and are saying they're saving clips. And yet the content they're putting out is still just at such a high level. It's just insane.
Yeah, man. And what do you think of this sort of save your clips movement?
I am, entirely all for it, really. I have had a bit of a sort of rocky relationship with Instagram. I think I really feel the pull to that instant gratification. I've always felt it. And have to actually make a real effort to sort of not get sucked in. But having said that, I think as a team we've always been quite good at keeping an eye on making videos and trying to, as I said, sort of contribute to the community, not in a sort of giving sense, but just being a part of something that inspires us, being able to sort of give back in a way, just trying to be part of that sort of pot. We've always made videos and will always make videos. We have sort of 3 or 4 projects ongoing, but at the same time, I'm not sure if you know, but for work I'm a filmmaker, so just really enjoy sort of making little edits. So everything that I have sort of left over or don't want to put in the videos or whatever, I'll tend to make little sort of 45-second, I don't know, like memory logs really. Don't know what they're for. I don't know if I'll ever watch them in the future, but they're there. And hopefully in the same way with the YouTube stuff, I get a lot of inspiration from Instagram, seeing what people are up to, keeping in contact with people, seeing what they're doing, seeing people pushing boundaries and things. That's inspiring. And if I can make something and sort of put that back in the pot, then that feels like a good thing as well. But it's certainly something, to keep an eye on. I think that the Instagram thing.
Well, it's interesting. Like today, they've just released the Reels thing. Have you seen that?
No.
So I think in light of TikTok and the success of TikTok, Instagram literally today, well, at least on my update today, you can now post what's called Reels on Instagram. So they're essentially like short clips in the same way that TikTok is, and instead of seeing a feed which you scroll through, you literally just swipe and see a different video. So it's just video in the same way that TikTok is. So I'll be very interested to see how that shapes Instagram, but also how it'll shape the parkour world, because obviously people will experiment with it in the same way that people have experimented with TikTok in a crazy way, and it's become massive now. And
with Instagram TV as well, that was a new feature that people, I think, did toy around with for a little while. And I don't think it ever really stuck, because the idea of Instagram TV, or the impression I got, was that there was a bit more sort of longevity to it. And yet, in my experience, I haven't gone back and watched a single one afterwards. There just isn't that that replay value for whatever reason. It comes entirely from the medium, which is bizarre. But I mean, there's the new update. I haven't seen it, so I can't say for sure. But it seems like another step in the direction of, as you say, mindless scrolling, zero longevity. They're just lost into the ether afterwards, which is, I don't know. I think it's a shame. It's nice to have a bit of a memory, something to look back on. And
For sure, man. I think it's that's what scares me a bit about making videos as well, because I totally agree. I've really tried to put effort into YouTube videos specifically, and over the years, and it's scary to think of making a new project and putting so much work in, and then kind of just, as you said, like it being just lost in the ether and just being a very, very minute impression on someone's day or something. And but then I guess you have to kind of reconcile that with, is it important for my own memories, my own sake? And like I was scrolling through Fifth Unit's, your YouTube channel, and you guys have gone back to, like, I think your first video, was like over 11 years ago now.
Yeah.
And you've been pretty I saw you kind of been pretty consistent, and actually had quite a lot of views, like relatively, in YouTube talk, I guess. Like I remember back in the day, like 10 years ago, the thought of getting 1,000 views was quite an achievement, really. So I noticed, quite high counts on your videos as well.
I think we were hit quite badly by that sort of 2-year break in the middle. I think when we started recreating videos, we never quite got the same sort of view count, I guess, as we did beforehand. And I don't know if that's just because the community moved on. I don't mean moved on from us, but just progressed so fast that so many more people were making videos. Like when we were starting, as you say, 11 years ago, particularly down in the south, there was really just a handful of people making videos. That was, Stora had started, they were just starting to pick up regular videos. There was the Prodigy of Movement guys in London, POM, they were sort of making videos, but there really was just a handful. So if people were looking to see videos from the south of the UK, we were sort of just there, you know. But yeah, I mean, now it's a different ballgame. Trying to get recognised in the sort of flood of videos now is just something else.
And do you think that saturation is ultimately a problem then for the community?
No, I think. Do you mean saturation on a specific platform like YouTube, or just sort of generally?
As in just the feeling that however the platforms change, there's just going to be more and more and more content, kind of never ending, and from more and more people. You know, like as you said, like back in the day, 11 years ago, whatever, you could name and probably have within your favorites list, but the best few videos, whereas now it's becoming increasingly saturated, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think I'd go as far as to say it's a bad thing. Like having more people making stuff is just always going to be a good thing. But having said that, I don't know this, it's not necessarily my area, but I feel like we will continue to grow in this way. The sport will grow, people will make videos, and this will sort of continue for a little while. And then I think people will start to need to put in more effort, or to save clips for longer, or to, you know, up production value, or the standard of those that will grow as well. And then you will get a sort of almost that top pot again. And I don't know. I think it will be, if anything, just interesting to sort of watch that happen. But yeah, I mean, sort of content aside, and bringing back in the save your clips question, there's more to save your clips, I think, and that is that when you're making a video, particularly with a team, there's a sense of camaraderie. It pulls you together. You've got a common goal. It's all of that is tied into the save your clips idea. And if you're sort of leaving content aside and saturation aside, people coming together, making stuff as a team, making stuff as two mates, just making stuff on your own that you're proud of, that is always just going to mean more, I think.
Yeah, for sure, man. I definitely feel the most inspired and encouraged when my friends put out a project. Really, I obviously watch the big guys. You know, I watch Sora and Motus and I nearly said Storm then, but they don't really. they're not doing as they're not putting out as much these days. But yeah, I do watch the bigger productions, but nothing gets me more inspired than seeing, you know, a mate of mine that's from the area who's put together something like, yeah, I guess it's powerful for, as you said, like that purpose for more kind of like localized inspiration in a way. I think it relates to the spots as well, because it's it's easy to see um complicated movement as impressive. So, you know, seeing someone do um a double backflip or something is always going to be impressive in some way, but not there's a big difference in training at a spot that like regularly and then seeing someone do something new there or something interesting there, and then seeing people's videos where you've never been to those spots. You kind of have a vague idea of how good something is or how interesting some movement is within that spot. But man, there's nothing that inspires me more than like seeing a spot that I've trained at for years just get smashed in like a different way. Like it's so cool.
100%, 100%. Yeah, localized inspiration. That's such a cool idea. And almost now that I'm thinking about it, each video, particularly the ones you're talking about of, you know, maybe a lesser known athlete in lesser known spots, that to me, that video is an invitation in a way of here's more opportunities, here's a hopefully a thriving community. Come and visit, come and train at these spots, come and try these challenges. It has the potential to be an invitation for people. You know, you could see a video from a team, you know, in a small town in Germany, and you could work it into a route. And it's just all about, every video is bringing people together in a sense and inspiring each other, and that's kind of special.
Yeah, man. And I was going to ask you a bit more on that, about the sort of north-south divide, I want to say, because I feel maybe divide is the wrong word. Maybe kind of, yeah, I'm not sure what to replace that with, but I definitely feel there is a slight disconnect between the north and the south in the UK with the parkour scene. I feel like a lot of people from the north do have to travel down south, kind of thing. We don't get many southern practitioners coming up as much, and we've actually spoke about this quite a lot in the community, and I've thought about making a video, literally just like a massive video of an invite to the north or something like that, just having like all the freshest talent and all like the best clips and just saying like we're here, come up and have a good time and you know, meet new people and have different experiences. But yeah, I wanted to ask you what you thought on that, and whether you agree, actually, because I'm kind of just hypothesizing. But yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to work out if that plane is mine or yours. I think it might be mine.
It's all right.
Yeah, I do. I completely agree, actually, and would find it similarly difficult to pin that down and find a reason, because everything's there. The community's there. The spots are there. The gyms are there. You have everything. There's no difference. But for whatever reason, there is. And if there is a divide, then shamefully, I'm a part of it, because I haven't been up past the top of London, really. Haven't trained. And we have friends and connections in the north as well. We have, you know, Eden and Liverpool and the Breach guys and Scotland, and Finn went up and coached in Scotland for a bit in Edinburgh. I've known one of the first people I ever met in the parkour community was a chap called Sam, who lives in Glasgow, Sam McFarlane, and I've never been to Glasgow. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It is ridiculous, and these guys do come down, as you're saying, but for whatever reason, there's just a sort of, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but it must be laziness. That must be it. Because why? I know there's an attraction to Europe, and going abroad is exciting, of course it is, but there's equally good spots in the north, and it's easier and cheaper to get to, and for whatever reason there is I think it's nothing more than laziness. But yeah, I don't know how you bridge that gap, but your idea of a sort of come and visit us video is quite a nice one.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the cheapness, because maybe that is a barrier. Because I mean, trains are not cheap. Like like if I wanted to get down to, man, I mean, we have direct trains from York here down to London, but they can set you back a good amount, like just to get a return. And they always have, really. But yeah, I wonder whether that's part of it, and that's kind of understandable, you know. Like it's quite a long way. It's quite a, but yeah, I think it's a good comparison with Europe though, because I could easily spend like a holiday down in the south and just train like along the coast, and I'd have plenty of people to train with. I actually kind of did that in like 2014-ish. Kind of went to Southampton and Brighton, and it's the only time I've been down there, but man, it was awesome. I loved it so much, and it was like, just felt like a holiday. It just felt like I was somewhere else. And yeah, so any Southerners that are listening, then please, like, we've got plenty of beds and places to crash. Like it's a really, there's a thriving scene, but maybe we need to do more as well. Maybe we need to do more to kind of offer that invitation and showcase like who we are and what the spots are about and stuff. Maybe.
I mean, when I was first starting, I didn't hear a lot from the north. So I started training in Dorking, very quiet, knew a few people, but the things you did hear about were Daggertween in London, and I was part of, as pretty much anyone in the south was, the Brighton Parkour Facebook group, and so there was the sort of big events, or the sort of day trips, were London and Brighton. You didn't hear anything from the north, and I'm sure it was going on. I'm not saying it wasn't, but just in my sort of little bubble when I was starting training, that was the extent of it. But yeah, I mean, there are people who are doing things about it. I mean, Chris Ilabaka, I've just got endless time for the guy, and stuff like this UK tour, I think a big motivator for that, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the big motivator for that, I think, is to connect the communities, and more of that is only a good thing. But yeah, they do take time. But yeah, perhaps a nice sort of welcome video is a good place to start. More jams, things like that. I don't know, it's tricky, but
yeah, man. I think I've just thought as well, there's nothing better than seeing my friends do amazing stuff, but there's actually another step. Like, for example, seeing Ben Reddington, who I think is vastly underrated and is actually one of the best movers around, seeing him training with Phil Doyle, like, for me, that just like elevates the hype even more, because Phil has been, Phil's like the OG. Phil's been making videos he's been out there for a long time, and has been an inspiration for me and so many people, like from the north, for like literally from the beginning. So then seeing like the connections between those types of people is just like, oh man, so inspiring. I can't wait for the video. It's going to be very interesting seeing that come together.
completely. Yeah. We have a similar thing with Harvey. Phil's now living in Bristol, so training a lot with Harvey, and just seeing those two together. It's just, it is cool. It's dead cool.
Yeah, man. I was going to ask you as well. I guess we're not really out of lockdown, but no one really quite knows. But I really liked your solo video you put out, and I just wanted to ask you a bit more about that. I know you kind of put quite a lot of work into it. For those listening or watching, it's a kind of a reflection on solo training and trying not to rely on help from your friends. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's certainly the sort of biggest thing that came out of the video. I sort of went in not knowing what it was going to be, and didn't really have a clear idea pretty much until it was done, really, of the things that I wanted to show, because I didn't know how I was going to react to essentially solo training. I forget exactly what I've said in it, but before before lockdown, my solo training experiences were so limited. And I think initially that was due to the fact that that social pull is huge for me. The social side of parkour is massive. Hanging out with mates, breaking down challenges together, bouncing ideas off each other, inspiring each other, and hopefully inspiring someone else. That's a huge part for me. I never really wanted to solo train, if that makes sense. Apart from the occasional evenings when you're just absolutely cacking for jumps and we'll just go out and do little bits and bobs. But so that was, I didn't really know how I would react, whether I'd enjoy it, whether I would hate it, So and because of that, I didn't know what it would end up as. But yeah, as you said, it ended up being predominantly a reflection of how to train without relying on other people for encouragement or reassurance. That's definitely the biggest takeaway I had. There's a different level of fear when you're on your own, and it's quite hard to pin down why. I think it goes a little deeper maybe than just if you hurt yourself, there's no one there to pick you up. I think there's, for whatever reason, there's something that's, for me at least, deeper than that. I think it exposed weaknesses that I didn't know existed. Namely that I think the only thing that I wasn't able to address in that video is because I was filming for the video, I sort of had that as a sort of extra bit of motivation, I guess, sometimes. And you can use that. You can say, okay, this is the one I'm going to film it, or whatever, and that sort of aids. But just removing that and going through the process of breaking down a challenge and bit by bit is so rewarding, and I think lots of that will continue to influence my training now, and it has actually. And I don't want to sort of make huge claims, but I think I do enjoy training much more now than I have done because of that experience, which is a sort of silver lining.
I'd say generally solo training is a lot less common these days. I think maybe because we're kind of having to stay together and kind of keep each other motivated. Maybe that's made group training more normalized. But yeah, I totally get what you mean. There's definitely solo sessions where you can feel so empowered and so like strong in yourself, and you don't have to worry about comparing yourself or other people's movement. You just focus on yourself, and yeah, I think there's always going to be huge value in it.
The other thing that again I didn't see coming at all was I found it quite reassuring. And this is sometimes quite difficult to talk about, but I occasionally, once a few months, sometimes feel, am I losing interest in parkour? And what's going to happen then? And for me, there's so much tied into that, because so much of what I do is to enhance my experience with parkour. So, I mean, I eat well and I go to the gym, and I there's little things like try and sleep well, and all of those things is basically so I can train for longer and enjoy it and be better and have my body sort of primed as best I can. All of those things. So when I feel like shit, am I losing interest, or has a spark gone? That is quite a scary concept for me. And the same when I've had some problems with my knee for 2 years now, and that's the same thing. That fear is really quite intense, because I would lose not only the sport but so much of my life along with it. So going back to my point is that solo training and that experience, or having 4 months without friends, which I'd pinned as such a big part of parkour, is quite reassuring to be like, no, I just love the movement, and I can have a week in lockdown when I don't train, don't even think about parkour, and come back and still love it just as much. And I think when you do feel like that, when you do feel yourself maybe slipping out of the excitement of it, it can just be a passing thing, and feeling like you can feel it slip away almost heightens that feeling. So I don't know, it's really messy in my head, and I'm not expressing it very well, but that was equally as sort of unexpected but valuable experience for me. Was just, no, you don't need people to train with every day. You don't need all these bits. It's just movement, and you sort of, I feel like I love the sport unconditionally, which is cool, and I might have weeks when I don't train, and that's fine too. And yeah, so that yeah, as I said, just came completely out.
Yeah, I can totally relate. It's kind of like a paranoia almost. I get it even if I haven't trained. If I have a week or two off from training, it creeps in very quickly for me. I'm not sure. I think maybe on a bit of a deeper level, it might spark fear in me about kind of getting older or losing ability in the thing that I am best at and enjoy the most. Because that's true for me. That parkour is what I enjoy doing the most and is my, I guess, best skill that I have. So I guess any sort of feeling of it slipping, it does. I think it can keep you on your toes, which is a good thing because it just means that you want to get back out, and then you have a session and you feel fine. But at the same time, I think it's probably pretty commonplace actually, that feeling.
I think so too. Yeah, massively. In fact, I would almost go as far as to say that it can feel like a threat on your identity, because I know we're getting into grandiose territory, but I identify myself as an athlete and a parkour practitioner, and if I was to lose that, I would feel like I lose sort of a lot of what I consider myself to be about. So it is scary, but that's why I think conversations like we're having and having conversations with other people you're training with is important, because I think you're right when you say that a lot of people feel like this.
And it's funny because at the same time, if for whatever reason I could never train again tomorrow, that would be hugely impactful on me. But at the same time, I think a lot of people forget how much they've done, how far they've come. Like, it's so easy to get caught up in wanting to get the next thing that you forget. This is something I talked about on the last podcast actually with Sarah. It's so easy to forget how far you've actually come. And like, in some ways, if I couldn't train tomorrow, I'd still be like properly chuffed with how far I've come from like a gangly, floppy haired 14-year-old into something that can move fairly well. So like, I think there is that aspect as well, if you get me.
Yeah, I think you're doing yourself an injustice when you say fairly well.
I appreciate it, thanks.
But yeah, no, completely. And at the same time, it's the other level of that is how far you've come and everything you've accomplished and achieved. And also, it's easy to lose sight of everything else that you do and are about, and family relationships and friend relationships and other hobbies and work, and there's so much. But when you love something, it really does it plays a huge part. It's hard to sort of not see that. But yeah, hopefully I'm not going to have to face that experience too soon.
Yeah, man. Well, it'll be interesting to see how we all cope with. I've spoken to a few older practitioners as well, and it's always so interesting hearing how they've been there 15 years deep, 18 years deep, and it's like it's just, I think it in some ways it's quite comforting, because you see people like Sebastian, you see people like Bo from London, and plenty of other people who are 30 plus, 40 plus, 50 plus maybe, and still doing good stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, so all going well, I'll still have a good chunk of time to just absolutely enjoy this thing, and always find different ways of improving. I think in my head there's going to be a change in how I train as I get older, but I'm not actually as scared about that as maybe I was a year or two ago. I think I'm kind of like just curious to see how it'll change in a way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think something that's really nice about our sport, and not our sport alone, but is the fact that when your body changes or your mindset changes or you have an injury or any of these things, the beauty is that you can always find a challenge. Say you have, I don't know, a horrible injury and your say you bail a running pre and you're then super scared of running prees. A small running pre is then a challenge. Or say let's take something really outlandish. Say you lose a limb. There's suddenly new challenges. There's always a way to challenge yourself, pretty much mentally and physically, and that is such a massive part of the attraction to parkour for me. I'm rambling here, but shifting your mindset from being fearful of not being able to do something that I'm proud of now in the future, compared to being aware that in the future I'll be doing different stuff but will still hopefully be getting just as much satisfaction from it. But detaching yourself from that idea that right now, or the last 3 years, or 3, 5, 7 years to come is my opportune window, which it probably is, but trying to lose that idea that that's a level that I'll need to maintain after is silly, but letting go of that's difficult. But hopefully I'm sort of on the right track.
And just while it's in my head, I've had a thought recently. I wanted to hear what you think about this, but I think communities could. It sounds weird, but I think communities could advertise themselves better. For example, this is a really. I'm surprised I'm even mentioning this, but I saw this random documentary on Netflix, and it was about this sport called roller derby. Roller derby. Have you heard of it before?
Isn't it like aggressive rollerblading?
Yeah. It's basically getting on skates and just being fully padded up, and then doing this strange game where you like kind of tackle each other and kind of get past each other. It's a very niche sport, but again, a bit like parkour, it kind of got its own little community. But there's this one scene in it where all the roller derby lot they just go out onto the streets like with all their skates on, and they just go mad, and they like hand out flyers and they hand out like loads of stuff, and people get pictures with them. And obviously it's a lot more flamboyant. I don't think there's many people who would even dare to be that flamboyant in parkour, like in terms of interacting with the public. But I did think, a lot of parkour people complain about, oh, well, all the public get it wrong. All the public like have misconceptions about our sport. Well, how much do we try? Like maybe it would be worth, I had an idea in my head. It sounds kind of stupid, but like handing out business cards or something that are, if anyone's interested, just handing them a card that explains what parkour is. Like, have we even thought of doing something like that? Or just, and especially with new practitioners as well, because I feel like when you train with a group of friends for so long, you do become very close. You become very bonded. But then it's easy then to not engage with the kids that want to get into it, who are kind of hanging around a little bit and do a couple of jumps and feel a bit like nervous and stuff. And I think actually we could do more about that, because I've been to jams where, and this is nothing against them, but people who are generally more experienced, they do stick together a bit, and they don't often lend a hand or just ask like, oh, how are you doing? Like, what's your name? Like, what are you working on? That sort of thing. To like younger people. And I kind of, that's just popped into my head now, but yeah. What do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think there's a lot that contributes to those sort of clicky groups. And as you're saying, being in a crew of 5 or 6 of you, or whatever it is, and making videos and getting that team camaraderie, it sort of does create this sort of barrier almost inevitably. But making a real effort to still include people and still train with others and not have that barrier be apparent during a training session is definitely worth keeping an eye on. But the only other thing that I'd mention that I think contributes to that is it's undeniably, I would say, more productive in a sort of training sense to train with people who are of a similar ability, because you're likely to pick up techniques or new challenges or new ways around things, or you can sort of have that relationship with someone that's of a similar level. And there's pros and cons, obviously, both ways. Training with people that are better than you is also fantastic for progression, and similarly the other way. But I think that definitely contributes to this sort of this clickiness, which is I think is very apparent. And again, it's something that I see sort of in myself, and I think based on this conversation, we'll try and make a further effort to do so. There was something else you mentioned just before that, which I had something to say, but I'm forgetting exactly what it was.
The roller derby. Or the public, or something like that.
Oh, the public, yeah. With the handing out business cards idea. That is such a good idea. I don't know what it looks like in practice, but I think certainly an easy middle ground is, and certainly something that we as a group try to do, is just be very polite and engaging and honest, and just talk to the public about what you are doing and why you're doing it as well. And I think that looks very different in, we all live in Dorking, which is a small, I don't know if you've been, but it's a small town, and having a good relationship with the public and having a good relationship with the police is good and handy and nice, and it creates longevity of training at spots. And people, I hope, understand that we're not there to break anything, we're not there to cause mischief, we're not there to be loud and obtrusive or anything like that. And so that sort of small town attitude, I think, is helpful. But somewhere like London or Brighton, where if the police are called, chances are you've never seen that police officer before. Chances are they've just come from other stressful jobs and are in a different mindset already. That's a whole different thing entirely. But I think our response as a community should be the same. It should be, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's why we benefit, and here's where you could learn out more or something. And maybe that's a business card. Maybe it's saying, I don't know, have watched this video, listen to this talk, here's some information if you want it.
For sure, man. Yeah, I feel I talked a little bit about this in a previous podcast, just generally about parkour people are very, very engaged with their own practice, and that is what has made the sport so incredible. But at the same time, I feel like if we could take a few steps away from being so immersed in just that, then I think that we could actually then help the sport more on a wider level, essentially.
Definitely, yeah. I think that comes from a place of love, doesn't it? People love training, people love parkour, and that personal relationship. So it's not at all, I'm not saying you think it is, but it's not a bad thing. But there is certainly, within the last year or two, I think a group of people, or a handful of people sort of dotted around, are showing an interest in the sport as a whole, and the sport as a culture and as a community and as a means for people to benefit from in a sort of mental health perspective and physical health. And there's people who are now, not that they weren't before, but are now very much more vocal and getting a chance to express those ideas. And certainly that should be more prevalent, I think.
Cool. I was going to ask you a bit about fifth unit and yourself, in terms of, I guess we've covered it a little bit, but about your kind of aims and aspirations as a group and individually, your own training. Is there things that you're going after, or there's things that you have on your mind? I'm sure there are.
Yeah, of course. I think in terms of it as a team, that seems like a nice place to start. I think they are just quite innocent. Our goals are quite innocent. We all have our hearts set on this big project, and it's taking longer than we thought it would, but it's going to be an absolute belter, and we've all enjoyed the process so much that that's going to be hugely rewarding. So that's part of it. We're going to make this big video and put it out, and hopefully make a nice sort of event for friends and anyone who wants to come and see that and contribute to the evening as well. But sort of more long term, it's to make stuff that we're proud of and continue enjoying sessions and hanging out and becoming closer and helping each other get better, and in doing so make videos that are essentially timestamps of this time in our lives. I think, I mean, you know, I can't speak for everyone, but I feel like that's quite a good summary of the feeling you certainly get when training with the others, is everyone's just trying to create timestamps, create long-lasting memories, contribute to the community as best we can in a sort of honest way as well. We don't, not in a selling out way or anything crazy like that, but we just don't really have an interest in monetizing our videos. We don't have an interest in chasing huge view counts or making monumental like impressions on the community as a whole. We just want to be honest with what we do, what we love, and just sort of stick to that, and hopefully people will continue to enjoy that.
Awesome. That sounds like a positive, very positive mindset, man. It's just respectable, really respectable. Are you good for a few more minutes, or do you want?
Yeah, totally. No.
Good, all good.
I've run through most of my questions, so I'm just thinking of just thinking of anything else. Anything else you want to discuss?
No, I mean, well, the other half of your question was sort of more on a personal front in parkour, but the sort of sentiment is the same. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it is just to continue to train, continue to find challenges, and to better myself. I think as I'm moving forward in the sort of parkour career or journey or whatever that is, the balance is shifting more from physical to mental, but it's breaking those mental barriers that is currently giving me the most satisfaction. So it's just sort of chasing joy within the sport, really. And I try my hardest to maintain this, that if I do fall out of love with the sport, if I do get bored, if I do find that I'm suddenly now into downhill biking and that really sort of gets me going, then I will do that, and I won't. I want to keep in my mind that if that does happen, that I will do that, and I will leave the sport, maybe not for good, but I'm not suggesting for a second that's going to happen, but I think it's just something that's worthwhile keeping in your mind, is that you don't have to do this. It's not my everything. It's just something that I enjoy, and hopefully, and I think, I mean, it looks very likely that I'll enjoy this forever, which is cool, but just, I think it's worth saying that that's something that I do. And in the same with my work, if I've one day wake up and I'm just bored of shooting videos, then I'll stop and find something else. And trying to keep flexible, I think, is something that's key. But yeah, as I said, at the moment, there's no sign of stopping. Just love it,
Yeah, man. And briefly, maybe it's better for another conversation, but briefly, so yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts on the mental side of training. Are there any particular methods that have helped you recently within your practice that mentally have helped you break jumps or be able to do something new? Or is there any kind of specifics? Because I guess this is a big conversation in itself, but
we could talk about that for another hour, I think. But yeah, I think the sort of short answer is that I've never been particularly logical when it comes down to breaking down challenges, and I'm talking about the sort of first 3/4 of my training journey. I've always, I think now I understand, relied on adrenaline and encouragement from others. And I haven't been particularly good at saying, okay, well, you know, say I'm 3 or 4 preps in, I've prepped again, let's use a running jump. I've prepped the run up, I've prepped the takeoff, I've prepped the landing, I know everything's safe. I've, you know, created this checklist. I haven't been good at sticking to that, but I think over the last probably 2 or 3 years, I have been better at working through it logically and building a trust within myself. But part of that is also admitting to yourself that there are things you can't control, and you will occasionally pick up injuries and scrapes and bumps and bruises, and walls will break, and that's actually also been quite big for me, is sort of just accepting that, and that in a way just accepting that as an idea does help me just sort of park it to the side, so I'm not now as influenced of those worries and those fears as I once was, because I've just said they're there and I can't really do anything about them. As you know, by in their nature, I can't really do that because they are unpredictable. They are, you know, whatever they are. So they're parked, and now I do have this sort of more logical checklist, and yeah, that's helped, and it does make training much more enjoyable as well. You don't need music in your ears or someone going 3, 2, 1. It's just nicer. So yeah, that's been the sort of the last couple of years of training, and it hasn't been particularly. I mean, obviously, I think about this a lot, but it's not been a very conscious decision. It's just the way my training's developed, and I think also, apologies for the little tangent, when I picked up my knee injury, my training style changed massively, and the challenges I was doing and finding changed massively, and they weren't necessarily the things that required a 3, 2, 1. There was more longer lines or technical bits that just required more thought process than judging a gap, seeing if I could jump it or whatever that was.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there, because I feel like I could pepper you with more questions on that. Maybe for another time. That'd be good to speak about, man. Definitely.
Sure.
But yeah, been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for coming on. For those listening or watching, you can find all the links and stuff for Fifth Unit and Markus in the description. Spotify listeners, if you let this run out, then you'll go straight on to the next one, which was last week's, which was with Sarah Mudalal from California, who's been coached by Tempest. And before that, a guy called Robin Link, who's doing bits on Instagram with coaching carousel posts, which is interesting to hear from as well. But yeah, Markus, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate your time. And obviously we spoke a bit about anyone coming up to the north, so you're always welcome, you and the boys. If you ever want to come up, then it'd be good to train sometime, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate the invitation, and also for coming on here. It's been really good fun. Really has.
No worries. All right, catch you in a bit, guys. Thanks for listening, everyone.